high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. I am Mike Walsh, your solo host today. That's right. 2 weeks ago, you got, 5, 6 hosts all together, and now you just get me. It's sort of a 4th of July gift to my fellow co-hosts that I'm not making a single one of them join me on the podcast today. But that is because I have 2 such extraordinary guests with me that I really didn't feel that a podcast was necessary. Plus, I got to know these people so well that, I'm already completely familiar with the backstories. Didn't have to ask any preliminary questions at all before we got on the podcast. Nothing weird like that. It was like talking to 2 old friends. It was so lovely. But before I introduce them, I do want to thank everybody, all of our good listeners, for always checking us out every week. If you haven't yet, don't forget that we're actually on all of the social media platforms. And for the past, since April, I think, we've been running a video series on YouTube, but across all of our social media platforms regarding our Joyful Disciples show. If you haven't yet, I do encourage you to check it out. It's a wonderful conversation on the year of prayer and how to pray with Don Ottaviano Britt and Father Carlos Santa Teresa. And they have these great insights on what it is to pray, why we pray, how to pray, what we should be thinking about when we're praying. So John Kalitz, as you know, it was his idea to put this whole thing together, and he's been doing a great job of it. And I have to say that the videos themselves are doing gangbusters, particularly, it's about a 10-minute episode, but they're broken up into roughly 1-minute segments on all of our social media platforms. So I would encourage you to even check those out from time to time. They're just great little one-hitters. And a new one comes out every single day. A new one of the clips comes out every single day. Very easily to consume, very emotional, very, very forthright. It's really good stuff that I hope you will find beneficial in your personal prayer life. Because Lord knows, my prayer life gets stagnant from time to time. My son is off at a camp this week, in a Boy Scout camp in New Mexico. He's at the Philmont Scouting Reservation, and he actually left a few days ago. We got him to the airport at 3 a.m. He's currently there now, and he's going to begin the actual trek, which will take him out of cell phone range, and there won't be Wi-Fi. So I'm going to go about 10 days without having any connection of any kind in this modern world with my son. And I will tell you that my prayer life is going to it won't be tested. It's not going to test my prayer life. It's going to really focus my prayer life and give me an opportunity to, use its meditative healing processes, as well as, quite frankly, asking for, his safety and that he's having a good time and that he and his fellow scouts are looking after each other. He's fortunate he's going with 6 of his closest scouting friends. So I'm not technically worried, but you're a dad and your son's away from you, and I will admit it, I'm very nervous about it. You've heard me on this podcast before. I suffer from anxiety, and I will tell you that a healthy prayer life is something that helps with anxiety, and was one of the things I reminded him when he left. I gave him a short little list of reminders, things to think about while he's, have fun, enjoy yourself, take care of each other, that kind of stuff. And I told him, I was like, listen, if you get nervous, don't forget, pray. That's your opportunity for a little bit of meditation and some self-healing, and, certainly asking for the help from God or from the saints to intervene on your behalf. So anyway, I would encourage you, if you haven't yet, check out that series, Joyful Disciples, Season 8, on YouTube and anywhere Talking Catholic can be found. And remember, you can always get to our website at talking.catholicstarherald.org. And you can see all of our podcasts, all of our video series, everything we're putting together. And yes, that's one other thing. We have a new coadjutor bishop, and he is we have seen already some of the stuff he did for the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis. And don't think that John Kalitz didn't already come up with 6 different projects for him to work on in the digital space. So for those of you who are wondering if You'll see Bishop Joseph Williams put to the test by John Kalitz. John Kalitz has every plan already. We just haven't heard yet if Bishop Williams will do it, but I have a sneaking suspicion he will be open to the idea. And don't worry, you've also been asking when is Bishop Sullivan going to appear on the podcast? He is. We've never had a bishop on this podcast because back in the day, I would always explain to people that Bishop Sullivan has a very particular way of interacting with the faithful here, and the podcast was simply never something that he needed to be on because he was so present in all of our parishes and in the communities that being on the podcast was actually redundant. But as his time as our boss slowly and in the far distance comes to a close, there have been conversations about getting him on the podcast sometime soon. So don't be surprised if sometime before March 17th, the good bishop joins us for an hour sometime down the road. But anyway, that's it from me, and I really want to bring on my guest. So you heard that when I was not on the podcast, a rarity 2 weeks ago, I was down in Atlanta for the Catholic Media Conference. And if you listened to the podcast last week, you heard me give a sort of a synopsis of what I was up to while I was down there. It's a great event, Catholic Media Conference. I'm a board member. I was a co-chair this year. I'll be the chair next year of the national committee for the conference, and it's a wonderful experience. It's a great place to be, but the real beauty of it, beyond talking or beyond the sessions themselves, the plenaries, the special guests, the roundtable discussions, the special events that are a part of it. Beyond all of that incredibly worthwhile content that you can have at your fingertips when you're at the conference. The truly best part of it, please excuse me, as I am getting over a cold. The best part of it is meeting the people. And so I have two of those people here with us. And I specifically invited them on because they are young Catholic professionals who truly impressed me when I was in there, when I met them this week. Two of them, neither one of them I had met face-to-face. That was the first time. And only one of them I even mildly knew. There were a variety of, but there were a series of Zoom calls earlier in the year. So I was so impressed by both of them once I was in their presence. I said, hey, listen, you guys got to come on a podcast. And because they were young Catholic professionals, their first question to me was not, for once, what's a podcast? Instead, they said, oh, where can I follow that? Which was very nice to hear. So as I take a sip of water, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves so that I can take a break. Monty, who are you and where are you from?
Well, thanks, Michael, for having me on this podcast. My name is Montie Chavez, and I'm coming to you from the lively city of Las Vegas, Nevada. And so I am the Director of Communications and Development for the new Archdiocese of Las Vegas. And I also help with a number of other areas here in the Archdiocese and the Nevada Catholic Conference. And so I've been here for 2 years and loving it, other than the 110-degree weather that we're experiencing right now.
I have to imagine that is one heck of a commute every morning when you're fighting in that weather. And don't let me forget, I do want to come back to you about the fact that you guys went from a diocese to an archdiocese, because I find that to be fascinating. So, and the other person with us today is Moira. And Moira, who are you and where are you from?
Hey, Mike, thanks so much for having me on. Glad to be here. My name's Moira. I'm the digital content manager for Catholic Mobilizing Network, a national organization working to end the death penalty and promote healing practices of restorative justice. So I do all sorts of digital communications for them, which I'm sure I can tell you more about. I'm located in Washington, D.C. That's where our office is based, but we work nationally throughout the country with different, local partners, diocese, grassroots activists, all sorts of different people. I'm a proud Marylander, so I grew up in Maryland, just outside D.C., and now live in D.C.
Moira, it is absolutely wonderful to have you on the podcast as well. I have to tell you, Moira and I had this conversation. Maryland is my second favorite state in the Union, has the best flag in the Union. And,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's the best flag in the Union because they put it everywhere. jerseys, sporting team jerseys, every place. The crabs are changed into those colors. It's fantastic. So yes, Maryland, one of my favorite places to meet you. So you're both young Catholic professionals, but let's talk a little bit about that, about how young each of you are. Moira, how old are you?
25.
Monty, how old are you?
Well, that's kind of a long answer. So I'm 29 years old, but I kind of identify as a 70-year-old. So I think I'm still in the young adult category, but I'm an old soul.
Monty, that is exactly the term used to describe you. You are 1000% an old soul. But both of you have sort of interesting backgrounds. But Monty, I'm gonna start with you because let's face it, you're one of the most interesting human beings I've ever met. I don't get an opportunity to talk to many former Capuchin friars. So, how does one go from small town boy to friar to communications director for the Archdiocese of Las Vegas?
That's a great question, and I still wonder that myself sometimes. So I was born and raised actually in New Mexico, a couple hours south where your son is currently doing the Boy Scouts trip, and just born and raised in a very Catholic, very devout family. Kind of went through the routines of going to mass, being an altar server, all the works like that. And during high school, I went on a youth group trip to Denver to a Steubenville conference. And when I was there, I was already kind of starting to think of the idea of priesthood or religious life, but wasn't sure. And that was when I first met the Capuchin friars for the very first time. Went to confession. There's like 100 priests hearing confession, and I got sent to one of the Capuchins, and kind of the rest is history. So right after high school, I decided to enter formation with the friars, and so kind of began that formation process, and that led me to a lot of different cities and a lot of different places. And so just going through the list quickly, I did a year of college seminary in Cleveland, Ohio. And I did a year of postulancy in Colorado Springs. Postulancy is kind of the precursor to what is called novitiate, and that's in Santa Barbara, California, or more specifically, a little town called Santa Ynez, California. And novitiate is a year of intense prayer and discernment to take simple vows with the friars, the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, or as we like to say in the friars, no money, no honey, and we got a boss. So we'd always have these little lines for different things. So no money, no honey, and we got a boss.
Nice.
So after that year of discernment, we would take what are called simple vows or temporary vows again, and that would be for a 3-year period. And so I went back to the headquarters of the province, Denver, did a year of discernment there for either priesthood or lay brother. And at the time, I decided that I really wanted to discern if the Lord was calling me to religious life. And if so, that would be the Capuchins. You know, I could put the priesthood studies and discernment on hold, but I really wanted to see what it meant to be a Capuchin, because with the priesthood's one and the same, whether you're a diocesan priest, a Benedictine, a Franciscan, a Jesuit, the priesthood is the same. But the charism of the religious order is what makes living out that priesthood different. And so for me, I wanted to really discern if the Capuchins were the place where I was supposed to be. And so after a discussion with my superiors at the time, we decided that I would go to San Antonio, Texas, to a new religious formation house that the Capuchins had just opened up. And I began studying, at the time, graphic design for the friars. The idea was that it would be a great effort and a great contribution to works in the new evangelization and to help with the province and some of their development efforts. But God has surprises, and I ended up studying public relations and marketing, which kind of led me down another unique path. So again, I was still discerning with the friars, but I began this new journey in PR and marketing. And at that time, that was when the McCarrick scandal started coming out again with the sex abuse scandals and all this turbulence again in the church. And so talking with my professors and leadership at the province, I actually was able to kind of specialize my PR studies in crisis communications, and specifically worked on how to, from a PR stance, work with sex abuse, or, with the modern times, a mass shooting or ransomware or cyber attack. So 3 very relevant areas in PR. So I went through the program, and I ended up discerning out of the friars March 2019, and that kind of began this fast track process of trying to figure out what's next for me in my life. I had spent the last 7 years in this very structured life of being a friar, and a very structured prayer life. And so now, for the first time, I was getting ready to be on my own, and so started looking around for different positions. And that's when I took my first job, and I went all the way from San Antonio, Texas, all the way up to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I worked for a religious order for a couple of years. And that was right when COVID started. And so I was able to help with a lot of crisis communications in a lot of different areas. And through that COVID experience that we all went through, trying to figure out how to stay busy, decided to get my MBA through the University of Mary, and then started looking for other career opportunities, which led me to Las Vegas. So that's I've been here now for 2 years, and it's been a wonderful 2 years working with the faithful and the priests, religious, and the bishops here in Las Vegas.
That is a fascinating story, which you and I did not touch on when we were hanging out at the Catholic Media Conference. But I kind of had looked you up a little bit and kind of got the ballpark of some of that. I was like, I bet you there's a story behind all this. I was not expecting that story to include that the spirit of public relations took me away from becoming a Franciscan friar. That I had no idea that the goal of the jaded life could be something that was somehow something that a friar could want. So,
well, I think that was the beauty of the friars. Today, July 3rd, is actually the anniversary of the Capuchins. I believe it was 1528. The papal bull Religionis Zealous came out that approved the Capuchins. And so in that spirit, I'll talk briefly about the friars. The friars are unique because there's both priests and brothers. In some religious orders, there's only priests. In some, there's only brothers. And so within the community, they all support each other. The friars, whether you're a brother or a priest, they all have the same common life of prayer and mass, fraternity. And so that was what was unique about taking a step back and discerning the lay brother life, was how am I going to contribute to the community? And it wasn't to get into PR marketing to be away from the community, as at the time, the notion of how could I use these skills and gifts from the secular world to help the community, especially in the areas of evangelization, development, fundraising, and then as things start to go into some of the crisis communication. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive as much as how can we take the good and the beautiful and incorporate it into religious life.
Well, I'll tell you that was my journey is nothing like that, but my choices were very similar to that in the sense that I really did want to bring the talents I learned in the secular world into diocesan life, into the Catholic world. because I thought, and this is something that's been backed up for years within our diocese anyway, we put a lot of value on Catholic professionals here. People who come from the business world but are good Catholics, because I think you can bring a lot to the Catholic faith. This is a discussion that came up in the Catholic Media Conference. One of the sessions was, do your employees need to be Catholic? And certainly that in the Catholic diocese, there is an expectation that that most of your employees are going to be Catholic, and I think that just makes sense. But at the same time, there are roles that do not require Catholicism within the diocese. And for some of those roles, I have absolutely no problems with hiring a non-Catholic. However, with the caveat that I do believe that person needs to have respect not only for this faith but for all faiths. So if they were a person of strong Jewish faith but wanted to work in the Catholic Church and retain their Jewishness, I would have absolutely no problems with that, because I want a good professional, but one that has a mutual respect at the very least of faith. Monty, thank you very much. And now we're going to turn to Moira, and then we're going to find out if she was discerning to be a nun at any time, which I don't believe she was. I say that jokingly.
I can't say I was, but I can kind of tell you how I got here, which is not as exciting, maybe, Monty, as your journey, with less relocations as well. But just kind of go back to when I was pretty young. I was always kind of interested as a young person in the criminal legal system, in law. I have an aunt who's a criminal defense attorney, and I just thought she was the coolest person ever and had the best job. So I was really fascinated and captivated by this. And it just piqued my interest in a way that it was something I was thinking about and paying attention to. So when I heard a homily when I was about 8 years old, probably the only homily I remember from that long ago, about Therese of Lisieux and the way she prayed for a man leading up to his execution, I was so intrigued. So I remember my priest telling this story, that there was a man set to be executed, and young Therese of Lisieux was so enraged by this execution and by the death penalty in general that she went to her mother superior and she said, "What can I do?" And her mother superior said, "You're not going to stop this man's execution, but you can pray for him. And you can pray that before he dies, he asks for forgiveness and that he asks for redemption." And so she prays every day. And it is said that before this man was executed, he looks up to heaven and he asks for God's forgiveness. And so there was this moment of redemption right before his execution. And we can credit that maybe to Therese's prayer. And so I was really inspired by that. And so when it came time for my confirmation, I took her name as my confirmation name and just kind of always carried that with me. And I remember as I started getting older, I really started thinking like, okay, maybe I could be a lawyer. Maybe I could go into the criminal legal world. I remember asking my parents, how do I become a lawyer if the death penalty is still around by the time I'm a lawyer? How could I prosecute someone knowing that my prosecution could put them to death? Or how could I defend someone knowing that if I don't come up with a good enough defense, it means their death? And I was really grappling with that, and it really bothered me. But I still was kind of pursuing this career path. So when it came time for me to go to college, I was discerning what I should study. And I know, typical pre-law majors may consist of like poli-sci, history, different majors like that. I was a science nerd. So I really wanted to be a lawyer, but I also really liked science. So I went to Loyola University Chicago, go Ramblers, and studied forensic science. They have a really good forensic science program there. And to me, it felt like this perfect opportunity to still scratch that science itch in my brain, but kind of get a background look into our criminal legal system. It involved lots of criminal justice courses and really opportunities to kind of explore this potential path I was going to go down. So I studied forensic science, learned a lot, took organic chemistry, which was really hard, and ended up kind of through that process of learning, realizing how broken our criminal legal system was. A lot of my professors had worked in state labs, working mostly with prosecution, and I noticed that they used this language in my classes of good guys and bad guys. They would say, "We have to catch the bad guys." And when I would say, "Oh, I think I want to be a criminal defense lawyer one day," they would say, "Really? You want to help bad guys? You must have no soul." Ooh. And that made me question, because I said, really, I see it as recognizing the human dignity in all people. That's why I feel called to that. If anything, it's because of my soul that I want to do this work. And I was encouraged by a professor my senior year, which was in the midst of COVID. It was 2021. A professor asked us, now that we've been spending this whole semester kind of looking at some of the flaws of our criminal legal system, what are you going to do? And I remember saying, I always thought that I would just go be a lawyer and I would just be one of the good ones. And be one of the ones who knows that I'm here to respect the human dignity of all people and all of my clients and just deal with the fact that the system is broken. But I started to realize maybe I could do something to change it. Maybe I could be part of change. At the same time, I was participating in a program that was the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola, but over the course of a whole year. So rather than going on a retreat for several months, we did parts of the exercises every day. And so at the same time, I'm graduating college, I'm discerning what I'm going to do next. I'm doing this great spiritual prayer practice. I was really involved in my campus ministry program. And I started thinking to myself, man, it's such a bummer that once I leave college, I have to stop doing this faith thing. Because I thought you kind of just had to give it up and go enter into a professional world. And then I realized that really my faith and my passion and my desires went hand in hand. So I was interning with the Ignatian Solidarity Network. They're part of the reason I was able to kind of make that connection. If you don't know who they are, they're working with youth in high schools and colleges to help inspire faith-based justice work on a whole bunch of different issues. They're wonderful. So I got to work with them out of college, and that's how I found my way to Catholic Mobilizing Network. So Catholic Mobilizing Network is working to end the death penalty, advance justice, and begin healing. We do that through education, advocacy, and prayer, promoting restorative practices that are rooted in healing and advocating for the end of practices like the death penalty that are rooted in retribution. So I kind of stumbled my way here. I learned a lot about communications kind of along the way, especially through my work with ISN and from my wonderful colleagues here at CMN. And now I'm proud to spread this mission of CMN. It's one I really care about, and being able to give voice to that through my work as the digital content manager here is really meaningful to me.
So I just want to remind the listeners that you've just listened to a 25-year-old and a 29-year-old. So if you could be so kind as to stop lamenting this generation of young person, because this generation of young person does have wonderful people in it doing wonderful jobs and doing it for all the same reasons, even though they go maybe wildly different paths, maybe non-traditional paths to where they are now. But there are people who are doing, and they didn't end up here. This was something the choices they made that willingly got them there, and that's why the two of them were so remarkable when I got a chance to sit down with them. And remember, most of these backstories I didn't know before they came on the podcast. This is what their personalities are like, and they really impressed me. So, Moira, your background, there's a lot of similarities, or some similarities between mine and, I never wanted to be an attorney. I worked with attorneys and quickly found out that I never wanted to be an attorney. And I've actively tried to talk people out of becoming an attorney because it's a tough life. However, I think the role of attorneys is incredibly important. And I cannot believe your professor said that to you, because I mean, our criminal justice system only works. The parts of it that aren't problematic, but the part that is really important is everybody deserves a fair defense. And the only way you can have that is with good qualified attorneys. So you need to have people who are out there representing them, because occasionally, people do get misadjudicated. You do need attorneys there for their protection. It is absolutely possible. I mentioned to you this when we were at the conference. I had a background in wasn't a lawyer, but I worked with lawyers in corporate cases, or corporate lawyers rather. And, a number of them worked for the Innocence Project, who, they would actively try to get people off death row, or innocent people out of prisons. And it was all pro bono work. And, some of the cases that they were able to have overturned were truly, amazing. What they were able to do for people who had been, sent to prison wrongly. And it was for years and years and years, and finally able to get them out. Generations of their life had gone by. So projects like this are incredibly important. So thank you for being an advocate for them, Maura. That is really genuinely wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Mike.
by the way, also impressive with the background in forensic science. People on this or the listeners of this podcast also know that I have a deep appreciation for science and the fact that science and faith are not mutually exclusive. We had the president of the Society of Catholic Scientists on a couple of weeks back, Dr. Barr, rather, and it was a fascinating conversation and one that makes me happy all the day. So once again, thank you for proving to me once again, the background in science and a deep belief in the faith are not mutually exclusive things. So well done, Moira.
Thank you, Mike. And Mike, if I can just say, your mentioning of the Innocence Project is really apt at this time. Just 2 days ago, the 200th person was exonerated from death row since 1973. So from 1973 to July 1st, 2024, 200 people have been exonerated from death row, meaning that they should not have ever been on death row. They were set to be executed for a crime they did not commit. And they, thankfully, by the grace of God and the hard work of lawyers and advocates, have been free. 200 people we know have been freed, not to mention how many people have already been executed or are sitting on death row innocent, not guilty of the crimes that they've committed. And here at Catholic Mobilizing Network, we know that innocence argument is one of the many reasons we should end the death penalty, besides the fact that it just is disgraceful to human life and no person should be put to death, regardless of the harm they've suffered or caused. But certainly, risking innocent life is a serious concern of the U.S. capital punishment system.
Well said, Maura. I could not agree with you more. I've said that for every part of my life. That once a person is in prison, there is literally no reason that they should be put to death at that point. We have exacted all that is required of us as human beings at that point by removing a person from society who is in danger to society. You don't need to have the retribution of death to go along with it. Monty, now how many people have you saved? You've actually you probably have saved a couple of people on your journeys as a good young Catholic, I'm sure. But there is something I wanted to ask you specifically, and we still have another 25 minutes on the podcast, but I don't want to forget to do this. Yeah. You actually had one of the truly unique things happen in the Catholic Church to you earlier this year, about a year ago, I guess. It is rare for a diocese, because I didn't have any wind of this. I don't think anybody had any wind of this. One day I simply woke up and the Diocese of Las Vegas had turned into the Archdiocese of Las Vegas. Now, when I looked into it, it looked like this was probably something a long time coming, because there were some weird regional things going on with the way the dioceses and the archdioceses are put together in the United States. However, how was it going from being a simple diocesan communications director to becoming the communications director for the Archdiocese of Las Vegas?
Well, it's been a journey. So for a little context for our listeners, within the ecclesial world, within the church world, you have parishes, and parishes are part of a diocese, which is ran by a bishop, or if there isn't a bishop, there's usually an apostolic administrator or somebody else appointed by the Holy Father to oversee the administration of that diocese or archdiocese. Then a diocese is part of what's called a province, or part of a metropolitan archdiocese. And so before last year, the diocese of Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, and Reno were all part of the province of San Francisco. And so San Francisco, the Archdiocese of San Francisco, with Archbishop Corleone, he was the Metropolitan Archbishop with the suffragan Diocese of Northern California, Hawaii, the two dioceses in Nevada, and Utah. So it's one of the largest provinces in the world with that many dioceses. And so a process began. I can't really go into some of the specifics, but there were questions raised about if it should be split up and make it a little more centralized within the region. And so after a lengthy process, it was presented to the Holy Father, and it was decided that there should be a new archdiocese, and that would be the Las Vegas diocese raised to the status of an archdiocese, with the suffragan diocese of Reno and Salt Lake City to be part of the newly established province. So with that, it's been interesting because that was approved and announced by the Holy Father last May. Then we had about a 20-day period to plan a pilgrimage for 60 people to go to Rome with the Archbishop to receive the pallium from the Holy Father. And so that was a very quick turnaround, but we do things quick here in Vegas, so and really well. So kudos to all those who were involved with the planning of that. And then began the big process for planning what we called, and get ready for this mouthful, the massive canonical establishment of the Metropolitan Archdiocese of Las Vegas and the imposition upon the first Archbishop of Las Vegas, George Leo Thomas.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a very exciting day. And we actually have right behind us some of the program inserts that went into that process. So October 16th, 2023, we had Cardinal, actually it was his first public liturgy, I believe, as a cardinal. The Apostolic Nuncio to the U.S. came out to Las Vegas, Cardinal Christophe Pierre, and he placed the pallium on our Archbishop, the first Archbishop of Las Vegas. So it was a great liturgy. We had over 40 bishops that concelebrated. We had the live streaming and broadcasting of it, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful day of celebrating the Church of Las Vegas. And who would have thought, Las Vegas has kind of a certain reputation as a sin city, but we like to joke here, it's actually a faith-filled city because we have about 750,000 Catholics. We estimate about 200,000 migrants or undocumented. And so we are a fast-growing archdiocese, and we're having to build new parishes about every 3 to 5 years. And we just opened up one. They're saying Mass in a high school auditorium, and we'll be breaking ground hopefully in the next 2 years. And then we're remodeling one of our parishes. We have, I think, 4 other building projects underway. So yeah, we've gone from 3 seminarians in 2018 to, I think we're at about 15 now. So it's just, we're on a fast track for growth and vibrancy here. And it's a lot of it's credited to Archbishop Thomas, but also the close collaborations with the laity and the religious and clergy alike, all working together in a kind of synodal way. We've been talking about that the last couple of years here in the country, but I think it's really seen that synodal process has really come alive here in Las Vegas as we continue to grow.
Yeah, it's funny. I over the course of the Catholic Media Conference, the synod came up a number of times, and not with the eye rolling that it usually comes up with from people who have their concerns about the synod, but a lot of the diocesan level synod commentary have really been shockingly beneficial for the dioceses and parishes. So I hope that is not lost on folks who have been part of the synod or been critical of the synod. But there actually are quite a bit of good things coming out because of it. Going back to the importance of the Catholic faith in the city of Las Vegas. Of course, it's well known that one of the sister cities of Las Vegas, I like to say, is Atlantic City, New Jersey. We have there are some similarities between us in the sense of what people know us for. But people will we'll have events in Atlantic City all the time, and people will kind of criticize us. If we have them in a casino or if we have them even in the city, they're like, "Listen, we got to be where the people are. That's where the people are." I want to go. I want to have an event in a casino so that they can see that the Catholic faith is there, not because the Catholic faithful are gambling or going to shows, but because the Catholic faithful are coming together amidst all of that with our Catholic faith insulated against that because of our Catholic faith. So we shouldn't be hiding these kinds of things. We should be present.
And part of, to that story that you just shared, here in Las Vegas, there's kind of an old story that our cathedral is here on Las Vegas Boulevard. And so we're surrounded by a few different casinos. And every now and then we get poker chips that are put into the collection basket or, some of the slot machine slips. And so the story was that back then there was a designated friar or monk that would go and collect all the poker chips, and he was known as the chipmunk, and so he would go and cash those out at the casinos. But that's kind of changed now, and so, but yeah, we still are looking for the chipmunks around. So,
oh, that is outstanding. That is an outstanding story. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So Moira, you and I got to spend, quite a bit of time hanging out with a number of different friends. I have to say, I want to thank you. I was adopted by many young Catholic professionals while we were there. I was adopted by a couple of senior ones as well. But big shout out to Neil McCarthy at the Archdiocese of Toronto and Janelle Gergen from the Diocese of Crookston. They took me under their wings as well. But Maura, it was actually great to be amongst the young Catholics because, not only was I truly impressed by the level of faith, I was actually very impressed by your knowledge, all of it, every young person's knowledge of the faith and the activity that their faith provided them professionally. I'm curious, did you expect to be doing something specifically faith-filled as a professional, or were you would you have gone to a secular place or a faithful place, or were you specifically looking for something in the faith?
I can't tell you I came out of college specifically looking for it, more so that it felt like a sign from God when I was looking for job opportunities and saw this one. And as I mentioned, I worked first with the Canadian Solidarity Network, so similarly faith-based justice work. And that was a shot in the dark. Like I said, it was in my senior year of college during COVID. And so I didn't know how to get a job really because people weren't doing remote internships yet or anything. I was like, I need work experience. So I sent out an email to an organization that I thought was really cool. And they said, sure, you can do a remote internship with us. And then when I was working there, I was working to plan their conference for them. And Catholic Mobilizing Network was an exhibitor. And part of my role in planning the conference was to communicate with our exhibitors, get them their social media, that kind of work. And so when Catholic Mobilizing Network came across my desk, I said, this place is really interesting. I'm going to look more into them. Lo and behold, they were hiring and I found my way here. And so it really was kind of this process of discernment that I didn't know I was going to be working within the church. But when the opportunity unfolded, it seemed exactly where kind of my faith and my interests aligned, and it felt like the right place for me to be. And I'm so glad I'm here.
On this podcast, we talk a lot about discernment. Usually it's in the vocations area, but we try to use that terminology across a number of different venues. And it's been nice to hear both of you kind of talk about that because, I really do think it's an important concept to have as part of your life in general, not just as young professionals or discerning what you want to do with your life and stuff like that. That sort of, because I am not where I expected. When I had planned on being a history teacher, that was my life's goal. I got to do it for 1 year, and then I didn't get to do it anymore. And I still consider myself a teacher at heart because that's what I went to school for, and that's what I believe in. I came from a family of teachers. But I am very happy that I've been given these opportunities and this knowledge that I now possess to work in areas I never considered. I never would have. I mean, what am I doing on the board of directors for the Catholic Media Association? That is my, that's the weirdest thing in the world. And my mom, the fact that I took a pilgrimage to the Holy Land last year was something my mom still amazes over. Although she's amazed anytime I eat vegetables, so it's a low bar. But it's these things are wonderful, but you have to excuse me, let yourself be open to them. Have you both always been sort of in your nature open to new possibilities? I mean, Monty, you seem to be. Your path seems to suggest that.
Yeah, for me, discernment of spirits or discernment in general, it's always been a part of my journey of trying to see where the Lord is calling me to. And, when I was in religious life, sometimes I was told where the Lord was calling me to, through having superiors. And, there's kind of a joy with that. But yeah, even so now, as a young Catholic professional, maintaining that life of prayer and openness to, how's the Lord leading me now? And in my work here, we're facing in the state of Nevada, abortion amendment that will be happening this fall. And so working with the Nevada Catholic Conference as well, we're dealing with issues of life. And so again, trying to keep centered and maintain a good prayer life of how does the Lord want to communicate to people about this, this horrible amendment, but also what type of media or messaging do we want to use, and how can we make it beautiful, good, and true, and not angry and ugly and spiteful. How can we lead with the beautiful? So yeah, it's all the Lord leading, and just trying to be open to that.
Same for you, Maura. Kind of you have an open sense about it.
Yeah, what I was thinking about is, I went to a Christian Brothers high school here in DC, and the Christian Brothers, part of their charism, we end every prayer by saying, "Live Jesus in our hearts forever." And then went on to a Jesuit college, where, as we know, part of Ignatian spirituality, there's this concept of finding God in all things. Mm-hmm. And I think those two paired together really kind of inspire me in the work I'm doing, knowing that Jesus is with me at all times in my heart, and knowing that I'm looking to find God in everything I'm doing. I'm looking to find God on death row. I'm looking to find God in the murder victim family members, and I'm looking to help others see that as well. I think as young people on social media, we are overwhelmed by all the bad in the world. Mm-hmm. And it can become just dizzying scrolling through social media and seeing the harm after harm after harm after harm. And so being able to help young people, old people, everyone alike see where there is goodness, where there is God, even in these dark places, and helping people see how our faith calls us to act is kind of how I see my role and how I see myself discerning into this role.
You make a great point, and even beyond young people, I've been encouraging. We're in the midst of the usual tumultuous election cycle, so the social media, even the regular news, is overcome with negativity. And I'm not suggesting that the things that are being reported on are erroneous or anything like that. I don't suggest that. But I think that it overcomes a lot of the joy and good that's in the world all around us every day, which is why I don't think you need to put your head in the sand, but I do think you need to make yourself aware, and I think you actively need to make yourself aware that there are good things going on. And then I also think you actively need to be a part of the good. Now, what that activity is, whatever you're capable of, I suppose. I don't think that activity is sharing or liking or reposting things on social media. That's just siloing, and I don't think you're actually doing any discernible good. But I do think you can do good things in your community. They don't have to be big things. They don't have to be public things. Mm-hmm. If all you can do, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, I mean, if you're, a person who can't make it out or isn't capable of helping physically, your donation is a wonderful way of supporting something. But if you are able to go physically out or be an advocate or stand on a corner or help people or anything, I mean, that's available to you and will do so much better to the society at large than the venting on social media or just the wallowing on social media. So please, if you're doing that, turn it off. It's okay. Or all of those social media platforms now have mute buttons. You can literally filter out words or turn things off. My Instagram is a cornucopia of baking and joy. So people should. I'm not saying you just have to follow me, but I've changed my timeline so that as far as I know, the world is just getting. When I'm on that app, I'm like I said, don't put your head in the sand. When I'm on that app, all I think about is baked goods, my Philadelphia Phillies winning, the funny things I see on F1 or Eagles social media, stuff like that. So allow the joy to surround you, and listen to our young Catholics. They are wise, mostly. It's okay, or at the very least, they have a different perspective than us old grizzled folks, which is why that's going back to the conference. Since I didn't have anybody with me this year, and you all were so willing to adopt me, my goal was to sit with someone different at every meal. Because we have those group tables for the meals and stuff like that. And then for the most part, I was fairly successful. I did sit with a couple people more than once. Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Monty. But I really did try to move it around. And occasionally, I just sat at the table by myself first and saw who filled in around. And I met new people every time, or ran into somebody I hadn't talked to in a couple of years. So I just left myself open to connection, and it was absolutely delightful. It was a tiring week. I got up every day at 6:30 and I was in bed by 11:30, and then the same thing happened again because I was trying to be be present for everything. I only missed one thing, and that was because of Jerry Wachowski, James Ramos, and Maura for convincing me to go to get pizza as opposed to going to one of the awards evenings at the conference. And I got to tell you, that was a lovely evening out. It was my only time away from the conference the entire time. And actually, it was a perfect break. So, Maura,
it was good pizza, too.
And it was really good. Who would have expected good pizza in Atlanta? That was very surprising. Oh, yeah. It was very nice. Why we didn't go out for barbecue or something else, I do not know. Or the Irish pub to actually watch some soccer. I don't know why we didn't do that, but I had a great time there and it was a blast. So I left myself open to possibilities. And I've talked about this on the podcast too, but ever since COVID, I kind of made the decision that this actually happened to me just last night. Anytime somebody says, hey, anytime someone says something, do you want to do this? My answer is going to be yes, unless I have a conflict or something like that. I'm going to say yes. I planned on yes. I'm getting over a cold. I planned going home last night and just laying out on the couch, watching the Phillies game. And instead, my niece, who's going back to Detroit to work in a few days, she goes, Uncle Mike, you want to go out to Quizzo tonight? And even though I really didn't want to, I was like, yes. And we ended up having a great night. I went with her and her parents, and we had a blast out there, and it was wonderful. And I'm so happy that I did it, even though that was the last thing I wanted to do when I got home that day. So leave yourself open to yeses. I like to believe that's something a young person would do. Is that something what a young person would do, Monty, Moira? Please tell me that it is. Please tell me I'm channeling a young person. I really want to be young.
I think it is.
Thank you, Monty.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. You're very helpful. I also have to thank you, Monty, for, you were so kind. I kind of felt, it was weird. I kind of felt like you were doing me a solid. We ended up leaving together from the hotel, going to the airport out of town. And it was lovely just traipsing around the airport because my flight got delayed. Actually, my flight, I didn't even tell you, my flight got delayed to the same time yours left. So it just kept getting delayed. But we traipsed all through the Atlanta airport.
Quite the adventure. We had quite the adventure.
Yeah. It was and we went to see there's a beautiful chapel in the Internationals terminal where the sacrament is there. The whole Eucharist is actually there. Yeah. We could be present with it. It was absolutely lovely.
It was.
I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't said, as I was walking to go hang out in the M Club in the hotel bar for 3 hours, you said, hey, you want to grab an Uber together and we'll go over? And I was like,
I think my words were, hey, my Uber's pulling up in about 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to make a choice. Do you want to go to the airport early?
And I'd like to say that I did it in under 3 seconds.
You did. It was very impressive.
Like, sure, you got it. No, I'm open to it. Well, listen, thank you both very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. You both will now have a permanent invitation to come back at any time. If you'd, particularly you, Maura, if there's ever a time you want to pitch something to us, both to our newspaper or to the podcast or any of our vehicles, you are more than welcome to come on this podcast and talk about more fully what it is that you're doing. And Monty, any collaborations between the city of Atlantic City and the city of Las Vegas will always be something that I will be open to.
Beautiful.
And if you do not host a future Catholic Media Conference, I will be disappointed because that city was made for it.
That'd be great.
So yeah, so make that happen. And of course, the Diocese of Camden is open to either of you anytime that you require it and need it. And I'm certainly available to answer any questions. Or if you ever want best practices, which is the point of the Catholic Media Conference, talk to your fellow professionals about their best practices. I hope you guys will do it. So
Thanks, Mike. Such a joy to be with you today.
Oh, thank you, Maura. That's so kind to say that. No one has ever actually uttered those words to me before. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you all again next week. See you, everybody.